I'm so excited my Clearview came today. Stage one of moving to a dust-free shop was rearranging everything and cleaning everything because dust was everywhere. Stage two is swapping out the dust collectors, but I barely have room for the machines I have, let alone 2 dust collection systems. So before I even start taking this apart, I need to break down my old system and get it outside till I can sell it.
While I work on assembling the motor mount and blower assembly connections, I want to talk about why I'm upgrading and why I chose this system before we get into all the machine connections and ducting. I'm not a full-time woodworker, I'm a content creator, and since woodworking is most of my content, I have the good fortune of getting to spend a lot of time in my shop. Enough so that I have real concerns about my health and ability to do this long term if I don't take dust management seriously. It is a known carcinogen. So, as the business has allowed, I have invested in improving my dust collection. This is actually my 3rd system. That said, this setup is only going to handle the pollutants made at my machines. I'll still need a dust extractor to handle my power tools. That's stage 3. Theoretically, I could reduce down the hoses enough from this to fit the smaller tools, but it would just put too much strain on the motor unless I had other ports open, and then that just turns into a really inefficient system for power tool collection. I mean, my sander doesn't need a 5 horsepower motor running to suck dust. Lack of collection at those tools, though, is why the top of my ducts have looked like this. I picked the Clearview with upgraded 16-inch impeller because it should more than handle my equipment and gives me some room for future-proofing. My old jet did okay with the machines I had when I bought it, but then my 12-inch planer started giving me trouble and I upgraded to an 18-inch and it just couldn't keep up with that and the hoses clogged constantly. There was no way I could hook that up to my jointer, but it did okay at my table saw and my spindle sander. This setup runs about as well as possible with the way my planer is designed, which is not optimal for dust collection. And despite about 30 feet of pipe between the unit and miter saw, this collects the majority of dust at my miter saw, which is huge for me because it's the biggest culprit of throwing fine dust everywhere. I had my old one piped over there, but it really didn't make much of a difference. It also has enough power that I can finally add collection to my 12-inch jointer, another big win since that's easily the biggest mess maker in my shop.
Future Caleb here for a second. I want to show you what all the ducting looks like now that it's done so you can see what I'm working towards. I think that'll make more sense as we go through it. Alright, cyclone, line, Y connection, and then we've got a line coming out. This is what goes to my planer. Then it continues up to the ceiling and splits. We're going to talk about first is the split to what I'm calling the manifold, because this is my machine cluster where most things connect. I've got one Y going off to my bandsaw to a splitter. All the splitters I'm using come from Clearview, so they break the 6-inch into a 4-inch pipe. Then continuing down from that Y, another Y that goes to a splitter for my jointer. Then another Y. At the bottom of that is a blast gate that is serving as a clean out in case stuff gets caught in here. I can clean it out. There's a Y above that that goes to another splitter with a 4-inch hose. This 4-inch hose I use for my table saw and router table. I also have a big sweeping attachment, and it's also necked down to a 2-inch that works for my drill press here, as well as my spindle sander. But if we back up again to this Y, where it goes straight, shoots all the way across the shop, just like it did before. Then I've got some crazy joints going on, bringing it down to my miter saw station. And in the miter saw station, it's just an open 6-inch port there, and I kind of lucked out with dumb luck here, and the ports on my saw shoot right at that, so it's actually very effective at getting the dust. What it doesn't collect tends to just fall down in its heavy stuff, but I don't get that mist of dust coming out anymore.
Alright, it's time to start cutting pipe. I'm using 6-inch sewer and drain pipe, the thin-walled stuff. I struggled with figuring out how to cut it, but my compact rigid reciprocating saw with a long blade actually did a pretty good job at it for me. First up is making a straight run out of the Cyclone. I'm a little shy on the 5 feet of straight pipe that's recommended, but it's close enough that I think it's going to be alright. I'm a little short of the 5 feet because I needed to add a Y here to have a connection for my planer. Next up is getting the run to the ceiling so it's out of the way. I'm short, but I still need some headroom. To minimize resistance, I'm using 2 45-degree joints and a long leg to get the pipe up and change direction. Trying to keep it close to the corner of the wall and ceiling would have created a lot of resistance and reduced the airflow. You also note that I'm not taking this all the way to the ceiling because I do still want there to be a little bit of downward slope from my farthest point going towards the machine just to help things from piling up in the ducts. At this point, I really struggled with how to figure out the right links to get the duct to my tools. And then it hit me that it made more sense to start working backwards from here. So I start building the manifold column that'll connect to my jointer, bandsaw, drill press, and table saw. And it was while putting this together that I realized the joints were going to need to be screwed together to be stable. Fortunately, the Ryobi drill, impact driver, and driver set made easy work of that. The driver is actually this month's Patreon prize as well, if you're interested in that, and like free tools. This column is going to be really heavy, so I'm going to rest the bottom on the ground. At the very bottom, I'm going to have this blast gate to act as a clean out for this run. But it's useless if the blast gate is on the floor, so I swap out some of the screws for longer ones and add some standoffs to it. Hopefully that won't prove to be a waste of time. With the lower Ys in place, I add the pipe that raises this stack so I can figure out where the Y for the bandsaw needs to tie in. My Boss laser measure actually came in super helpful during this project for figuring out pipe lengths. I just have to remember to make it a little shorter than my measurement because I'm measuring for a Y, so it won't go all the way to the pipe where I measured. And now it's time to see this headache part of the project come together, just to realize what a giant headache it's really going to be. There's no room for an elbow at the ceiling, so I've got to shuffle my lengths to create some room. My guess was shortening the pipe from the bandsaw splitter to the elbow would lower everything enough, and it looks like it will. And then recut the verticals, and it's coming together. Now to see if there's enough room for the elbow. It rubbed the ceiling, but it fit. Again, I'm using double 45s here instead of a 90 just to decrease resistance and help the airflow better. Then I could prep some anchors before noticing my camera battery died and missed me using the laser measure again to work out the pipe length and Y connection to connect these two together. I needed a Y there so I could run a line across the shop to the miter station, like I mentioned. I tried to get cute with putting up this 10-foot section by myself, and that really wasn't a great idea. This thing is really big and bulky, and it's really making me rethink what I used to consider 6 inches to be. Anyway, I'm sure you get the idea. Ducting is a lot of trial and error and a great way to embarrass yourself. So I take a minute to sweep up with my riveted shop vac all the mess before moving on to a part I've been dreading. I'm using a 55-gallon drum as my dustbin, and there's not a hole in the lid, so I've got to make one. That's pretty straightforward, but somehow I managed to screw it up, and I couldn't get a bite with the flex hose on the lip I made. Fortunately, I happen to have an HVAC end cap laying around from the old system, so I pulled it apart and then used the corrugated bit and a couple tubes of silicone to make my hose connection. I have another problem that I knew I was going to run into though. My drum won't fit under the Cyclone, so I need to make my drum shorter. The tricky part is marking and cutting a ring out of it, but I came up with 2 ways. I used my Bosch laser level to project a level line and then copied that. And as an alternative, I tried to get cute with my rolling stool. What would have helped a lot with both of these would have been having a level floor, but I digress. Now for the fun part, cutting those lines. I use my Milner-Hoffen cutting and grinding disc and Milwaukee angle grinder. I think I'm getting close to wearing out this disc finally, but whenever it does finally give out, they'll send me a replacement for free, which is why I like these. And now I just weld it back together. Straighter cuts would have helped, but I did what I could. The reason I'm going through the trouble is my last collector had a 15-gallon bin, and I could fill that thing up with 2 full width passes at my planer, which is just no good. I'm tired of emptying dustbins, so I wanted the biggest drum I could fit. The next size down would be a 30-gallon, but by going through this trouble, I'll have about a 48-gallon bin for a long time, so I think the time invested is worth the time savings in the future.
All right, back to the future again. Couldn't help myself. I'll show you guys some of the machine connections, since that might be interesting since it's non-standard. Okay, my bandsaw, like many larger bandsaws, is 17-inch, has 2 dust ports, one on the bottom, one on the side. As you probably know, flex hose is very inefficient and it kills airflow, so this wouldn't be an issue on my machine now because of how much air it moves, but before I'd use some hard fittings just to try to smooth things out. And if I'd had more pipe, what I would have done is actually this little coupler section, shot it way closer, and with some finagling I probably could have hard piped this whole thing, but it doesn't matter. But that's what I did. If you have a lower power unit on your bandsaw where you have all these weird turns, if you can hard pipe them, that's definitely one way to really improve efficiency. Now my jointer, I have this splitter, and I'll show you what that goes to. If you saw my last shop tour, I actually covered this, but I'm going to hit it again. I'd say don't judge me, but there's no way you can't because the caulk is everywhere. But I found this like 12-inch by 4-inch dust hood thing that I carved in a little bit on the bandsaw to fit, wedged it in there, and just caulked the daylights out of it. My only problem with that is this area was still open, so I knew chips would fly through here. I figured brushes would be the best way. I didn't want something hard. So these are actually cheap brushes I was able to get for like $3 that I cut down and then just Gorilla Glued in place. The problem then was there was an opening here and dust was actually flying out here, and then from the suction coming through the brushes getting stuck there, which as you can see I haven't cleaned out yet. So I cut another one in half and stuck it on each side, and now my dust collection here is like 98% probably, which is amazing on an 1890s joiner before dust collection was even thought of. I mean, that was just some kid with a broom. So here at the miter station, my plans have changed now that I've seen how the clear view works. I was going to use the shop vac, the rigid shop vac, and keep it here permanently and hook it to the miter saw, and then also have this as ambient. But I got lucky, and this Makita saw that you can also get at Home Depot, it actually shoots straight at that pipe, so it picks up almost everything like I was talking about. The only problem I've noticed is this port tends to get clogged, so I think I might just hook a vacuum to just that port, which will be more powerful to keep this clean. And then I'm also going to add some plexiglass over the front just to close it in, just to help direct the suction from the big pipe around the saw a little bit more. And I think that'll really step this up even more, although as it is, I really can't complain about it. And if I'm being totally honest, the only reason I'm even going to bother with the plexiglass on front at some point is because I already bought it planning to do that. If I hadn't, I probably wouldn't, because I don't think it needs it. Before we wrap this up, there's one last thing I want to talk about. Duct design is its whole thing. Basically, you want to keep the largest pipe you can and then just neck it down as late as possible to keep airflow. You want your curves to be as gentle as possible. Minimize how much flex hose, because that's all ripply on the inside, so it really disrupts airflow, and it's the airflow at your tools that you need to actually move the dust and chips. Another big thing is blast gate positioning. There's kind of 2 philosophies. One is to have it at the Y, close to the main branch, so you can cut off giant sections of your ducting. The other is to have it at the tool for convenience, because if it's at your ducting, it's probably less convenient than having it right at the tool, and the more convenient, the better chance you'll use it. As you notice, when I was installing, I went with having all my blast gates at the branch at the Y, so that way I can cut off giant sections of pipe, because my thought is if I can cut off, if I'm running the planer, I don't need all the rest of my system be pulling air. That's just extra resistance that's decreasing the amount of air. I can pull at my joiner to keep it clear. Same thing here, although the blast gates ended up actually being fairly close to the tools just because this was arranged. One exception is the miter saw blast gate is here, but for the same reason. I don't want air being pulled through all that pipe and all those fittings, and then I have a blast gate at the end when if I'm not using it, because that is a whole lot of pipe to pull air through if I'm not using it. So I'd rather just cut it off right here. Same thing here. All this manifold and stuff is a lot of resistance. So I don't want to be pulling air through all this if I'm trying to get air at my miter station. The one extra gate I could have done is at my bandsaw, I could have put one here to be able to cut off all of this whenever I'm using my bandsaw. But my bandsaw, just the way the dust collection is on it, it's not super efficient anyways, so I didn't want to burn an extra blast gate. I had actually planned for that, but that's the one I ended up using as the clean out on the bottom. I'm definitely not an expert at this, but I hope this was helpful for you anyway. Double anyway. I hope you learned something, were inspired, or at least entertained. Do stay safe in your shops, and until next time, make time to make something.